Εσύ έχεις κατεβάσει στο smartphone ή tablet σου την εφαρμογή του LGR. London Greek Radio 103,3. Μας φέρνει πιο κοντά.
On FM, on digital radio, on your mobile and online. This is London Greek Radio.
Και είμαι πολύ χαρούμενη γιατί έχουμε στη γραμμή τον βιρονιστή, συγγραφέα και συλλέκτη Geoffrey Bond. Good morning, good afternoon, Geoffrey. It's really a great pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you.
Nice to be with you.
Before we carry on, I would like to thank Rosa Floro because she is the reason, of
Yes.
connection. So, and she's listening right now from Greece. So,
I love Rosa. I know her well.
yes, and you have the same passion with Rosa. So
Yes.
it's great. Now, Geoffrey, you had such a diverse and accomplished career. How has this? What initially inspired your passion for heritage and education, and how has this passion shaped your journey?
Well, I grew up with an antiquarian, my grandfather, who had a library, and I was always mad about books. I was a bibliophile from the age of 5, I think.
Wow.
I was always very interested in heritage, and although I became a lawyer, soon after I started practicing law, I got involved in radio broadcasting on our local radio, BBC Radio Nottingham, and then I went to the Antiques Roadshow, and then I made my own programs on ITV about heritage. So that part of my life, because I've been a polymath, grew and grew, and within those interests, I had interest in the romantic poets, Shelley, Keats, Coleridge, Wordsworth, but above all, Byron, because I found Byron much more exciting man, generally, amongst the poets. And that's how I came to Byron, through my extensive interest in the world of heritage. And I've sat on a lot of national committees relating to heritage, including, of course, the National Trust. And it's really been a big part of my life, and I'm lucky enough now, Vasoula, to live in a heritage house, Grade 2 listed, which, of course, was the home of Byron from 1803 to 1808.
I mean, this is great. I mean, what it's like to live in Baggage Manor, the former home of Lord Byron. And I was so lucky, I was, so blessed. I feel really blessed that you invited us, and we had this special feeling of being there. But I can't imagine how you're feeling.
Well, it's a great privilege to live here, and I've definitely put Byron back in the house now. There wasn't much about him when I came, and I have visitors from all over the world. Of course, I'm a former chairman of the Byron Society in London and a member of the American Byron Society. So through all those connections, we've been able to build up the interest in the house, and I'm told I now have the largest library in private hands of books by and about the poet Byron. And it is a great privilege to be here. And as I say in my new book, Byron's Manor, in the first chapter, it can be given to few people to write a book about the person in the room where that person wrote their own books, their poetry in Byron's case. So it's been a great privilege and a strange feeling, really, to write my book, which I did in the Byron room, as we call it, in this house.
Have you had a moment where you felt a connection to Byron?
Well, I've had a moment where I've been working hard late at night, and I thought, well, I think Byron is looking down on me, saying, who is this chap trying to take over my room? I've never had any feelings which people ask me about, for example, ghosts. We don't have any ghosts at Byron, but I do get a strange feeling, particularly as if I'm writing late at night in the Byron room, I do get a strange feeling that he's about somewhere.
Wow. And Byron's Manor offers readers a glimpse into Byron's formative years and his life at Baggage Manor. What do you think were the most important moments for Byron during his time there?
Well, I think one of the most important moments when he was here was when he went across the road one evening of Burgage Green to a woman some 4 or 5 years older than him, Elizabeth Piggott, who encouraged him in all kinds of ways. And he went across, he was a young man of 16, he went across and she was writing poetry. And he said, "Oh, well, I write poetry." He said, "Well, can I see some?" And he took across some poetry. Well, that's where it took off. He wrote more, and she and her family encouraged him to go to the local town of Newark-on-Trent in Nottinghamshire, because there was a very good publishing house there, the Rich Brothers, who published Byron's first 4 books of poetry. So I think the seminal moment, if you like, when Byron was living here was around 1804, when he had this meeting with Elizabeth Piggott about the writing of poetry. That, I think, was a very important moment.
Wow, yes, I can imagine. Thank you, Geoffrey. Now, your book includes images, poems, and letters that shed a new light on Byron's life. Could you tell us about the process of gathering these images and any particularly memorable discoveries?
Well, of course, I've been gathering images for over 30 years, so I have an extensive collection of them myself, many of which have never been published. But through research, for example, we have published in my book a picture of the house in Aberdeen in Scotland, where Byron lived with his mother, Catherine Gordon, during his first 10 years in Scotland. I don't think that's been published before. And that was by doing research into the archives of the Aberdeen City Library and having help from them. And in addition to that, I have collected over time a lot of Byron material and images, which I was able to use in the book also. So this process of years of collecting and storing material and of going out to research with specific institutions. Again, I had great help from the National Library of Scotland, who I know, and were able to supply me with copies of letters and information that I would not otherwise have had.
Well, I mean, it's amazing. This is very, of course, you worked extremely hard, to gather all this. Yes, that's the main thing. You are so passionate about it. It was great to see this passion in your eyes, It's an amazing feeling. Now, in Byron's Manor, you explored the significance of Southwell and Newmark as the birthplace of Byron's published poetry. What key moments or influences during Byron's time at Baggage Manor do you believe shaped his early writing, apart from this lady, Elizabeth Piggott?
Well, I think he was influenced by the works of Robert Burns, who he came to read at Elizabeth Piggott's house, and he was very interested in the Augustan poets who he'd read. And the thing about Byron is he had an amazingly retentive, almost photographic memory. He must have had, because when he wrote, for example, his great saga Don Juan from 1819 onwards in Venice, he didn't have public libraries to go to. He'd remembered this stuff. And Tom Moore, who was a friend of Byron and wrote the first biography of Byron in 1830, tells us of what Byron said he had read at, say, the age of 19, and it's just a phenomenal reading list. You just can't believe it. So I think that Byron had a tendency to read a great deal, to remember a great deal, And there must have been within him this desire to write poetry, because he wrote so much in the short life he had, dying when he was 36. He wrote every day, and he was one of the greatest letter writers in the English language. Leslie Marchand, the American scholar, has produced his collected letters in 12 volumes. So I think from the start, Byron had a genius for writing poetry in particular, because at Harrow School he didn't distinguish himself coming top of the class or something like that. He was just average in his studies in Greek and Latin, which is what they mostly did. But there was the latent genius of the poet, which came out as he left Harrow School, came to Southall, went to Cambridge University, as you know, through Trinity College, and started his writing. So I think it was there. The genius of Byron was in him from day one, and it gradually came out and was certainly started to flourish at a great rate in his Southall days.
Wow, it's so fascinating listening to all this. Geoffrey, Byron is often, as we said before, I mean, in your book, you have published things that were not published before. So I would say Byron is often celebrated for his later works and personal.
Of course.
But your book focuses on his formative years. Why do you think this period is often overlooked? And why is it so vital to understanding Byron's legacy?
Well, I think it's extraordinary that in the huge Byron canon, all the books written about him, there's only been one book written in 1948 by an American scholar called Felix Pratt about Byron in Southall. And even then, he simply writes about the poetry. Doesn't even mention Burgage Manor.
Ακούτε το LGR, είμαι η Βασούλα Χριστοδούλου και έχουμε στη γραμμή το βιρονιστή, συγγραφέα και συλλέκτη Geoffrey Bond. Hello, Geoffrey. I think
yes. We were talking about what I would describe as Byron's juvenilia.
Yes,
the first four books of poetry that he wrote here in Southall and had printed in New York. They have never been very highly regarded by Byron scholars. They usually start with the famous Childe Harold Cantos 1 and 2 that he produced on his return from Greece. So they've never really attracted a lot of academic attention, except for one great Byron scholar who sadly died a few years ago, Dr. Peter Cochrane, who I mention in my book. So I thought that a combination of telling people about my time, having the privilege of living in this house, what it's like to live in this house, and at the same time saying this house was the birthplace, the genesis of Byron's early poetry, was important to tell the world. And there's been no other book I know of that has done this, notwithstanding the huge amount of books that are written almost every year about the poet.
And this book is to mark Byron's bicentenary year, yes?
Of course, it's 200 years since Byron died in Messalongi in western Greece, giving his life for the Greek cause, yes.
Your earlier book, Dangerous to Show, focused on images of Lord Byron. How does Byron's manor built on it differ from your previous work about him?
Well, Dangerous to Show, which I co-authored with Christine Kenyon-Jones, again, I found a subject which little had been written about. There was no specific book about all the portraits and images and sculptures and what have you about Byron. A lady called Annette Peach wrote a sort of catalogue raisonné about them for the Walpole magazine, I think, in the year 2000. But other than that, there was really nothing at all. So in 2020, Christine and I did a book telling the reader all about the famous ad vivem portraits of the poet and the sculptures and the caricatures and the cartoons. So it's a unique book from that point of view, and I'm pleased to say won an international prize, and is, I'm told now, the go-to book if you want to find anything out about Byron's portrait. So that was a book which, again, I wrote because, like Byron's Manor and Byron's Genesis of Byron's poetry here, it hadn't really been covered in the Byron scholarship.
Geoffrey, thank you so much. When I came to your house, I was impressed by many things, but I could see that you had in every single room the Greek flag as well, alongside the British flag. Would you consider yourself Philhellene as well, like Lord Byron?
Oh, yes, I think I'm a Philhellene. I've been learning about Greece since I was a boy at school. I wasn't very good at Greek, I'm afraid. It's very difficult for me. And of course, I've been to Greece. I've seen Rosa Florou create this wonderful museum now in Messalonga. I've been able to contribute some bits and pieces to that. And of course, you now have another museum devoted to Byron, which has been opened last year in Ravenna, in Italy. So I think with my interest in Byron, you cannot not be a Philhellene, as Byron was himself. And of course, decided in 1823 to go back to the Greece he'd fallen in love with in 1809 on his first visit there, and to help the Greeks get rid of the Ottoman Turk, which eventually you did at the Battle of Navarino in 1828. So all that is history I've studied and enjoyed. I've had many Greek friends. They visited this house over the years. And it's just been a pleasure to be associated with Greece.
And you can speak a little bit, yes, Greek language as well, yes?
Yes, I'm sorry, I just added a big failing. I apologize for that.
That's okay, but it's a special...
There's a man called Professor Byron Raisis, who was a professor in Athens. He tried to teach me some Greek, but I wasn't a very good student.
And now, actually, I think you are a very good student, because we taught you a new word to say to your beautiful, lovely wife. And you did so well. And it was the word sagapo.
That's right, I remember.
Yes, you do remember.
In fact, you've reminded me of Vasoula. I should mention my dear wife, Dinora, because in a way I couldn't have done a lot of what I've done in my heritage life and Byron without the support of my wife.
Yes.
She's been immensely supportive to me. We've been married for 62 years now, and she's very precious to me. And although she gets bored by Byron, nevertheless, she supports me. Yes.
No, she's a lovely lady, and yes, we can see that she's very supportive, and this is amazing. Now, you have a website where we can find more about you, where we can see how to find your book. You know how.
It is called GeoffreyBondBooks.com. Geoffrey, Geoffrey Bond Books, one word, GeoffreyBondBooks.com. And the new book is on there, Byron's Byron's Manor. And if you click on just underneath where the book is, you get a little film by me speaking to you from this house and telling you about it.
And I think it's that lovely portrait, that photo of yours when you've been a sheriff of a city of London.
Oh, yes.
That's amazing. Yes. I really love it.
Yes, I've been very fortunate to have some distinguished public offices. Very enjoyable.
Excellent. Now, a last message before we...
A last message from me. My last message from me to all your Greek listeners is how much we treasure our relationship with Greece, how we wish to retain that warm relationship, and I hope that many people from Greece will continue to visit my house here and see my Byron collections, which I shall be very, very pleased to show them. And I hope, and before too long, I'll be able to make another visit to Greece as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Geoffrey. And please do keep us posted about your news. And
Yes,
if you
I will,
do
Vasoula.
come to London, of course, you are always welcome to come to the studio. But just let me know. Yes?
I will, yes. Just finally, there is a piece about my book in Country Life last week and today in the Times Literary Supplement, so it's getting good coverage.
Congratulations. Amazing. You're doing really well, and I'm not surprised, to be honest.
All right. Well, Vasoula, it's been a pleasure to speak to you, and my good wishes to everybody.
Thank you, Geoffrey. Have a lovely day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
On FM, on digital radio, on your mobile and online. This is London Greek Radio.